Hi guys, and welcome to HTP Storytime. I've been looking forward to reading a Roald Dahl story, and tonight the dream becomes a reality. Another dream realized tonight will be me inflicting my amazing talent for accents upon you, dear listener. The story is called Man from the South, and it involves a young guy taking a pretty crazy bet. This bet takes place poolside in a Mediterranean resort, where our protagonists are brought together by fate through the lighting of a cigarette. Let's get going and meet our friend, the Man from the South. The Man from the South. It was getting on towards 6 o'clock, so I thought I'd buy myself a beer and go out and sit in a deck chair by the swimming pool and have a little evening sun. I went to the bar and got the beer and carried it outside and wandered down the garden towards the pool. It was a fine garden with lawns and beds of azaleas and tall coconut palms, and the wind was blowing strongly through the tops of the palm trees, making the leaves hiss and crackle as though they were on fire. I could see the cluster of big brown nuts hanging down underneath the leaves. There were plenty of deck chairs around the swimming pool, and there were white tables and huge brightly colored umbrellas, and sunburned men and women sitting around in bathing suits. In the pool itself there were 3 or 4 girls and about a dozen boys, all splashing about and making a lot of noise and throwing a large rubber ball at one another. I stood watching them. The girls were English girls from the hotel. The boys I didn't know about, but they sounded American, and I thought they were probably naval cadets who had come ashore from the U.S. naval training vessel, which had arrived in harbor that morning. I went over and sat down under a yellow umbrella where there were 4 empty seats, and I poured myself a beer and settled back comfortably with a cigarette. It was very pleasant sitting there in the sunshine with beer and a cigarette. It was pleasant to sit and watch the bathers splashing about in the green water. The American sailors were getting on nicely with the English girls. They'd reached the stage where they were diving under the water and tipping them up by their legs. Just then I noticed a small, oldish man walking briskly around the edge of the pool. He was immaculately dressed in a white suit, and he walked very quickly, with little bouncing strides, pushing himself high up onto his toes with each step. He had on a large creamy Panama hat, and he came bouncing along the side of the pool, looking at the people and the chairs. He stopped beside me and smiled, showing 2 rows of very small uneven teeth, slightly tarnished. I smiled back. "Excuse, please, but may I sit here?" "Certainly," I said. "Go ahead." He bobbed around to the back of the chair and inspected it for safety. Then he sat down and crossed his legs. His white buckskin shoes had little holes punched all over for ventilation. "A fine evening," he said. "They are all fine evenings here in Jamaica." I couldn't tell if the accent was Italian or Spanish, but I felt fairly sure he was some sort of a South American. And old too when you saw him close, probably around 68 or 70. "Yes," I said, "it is wonderful here, isn't it? And who, might I ask, are all these? This is no hotel people?" He was pointing at the bathers in the pool. "I think they're American soldiers," I told him. "They're Americans who are learning to be sailors." "Of course they are Americans. Who else in the world is going to make as much noise as that? You are not American, no?" "No," I said, "I am not." Suddenly one of the American cadets was standing in front of us. He was dripping wet from the pool, and one of the English girls was standing there with him. "Are these chairs taken?" he said. "No," I answered. "Mind if I sit down?" "Go ahead." "Thanks," he said. He had a towel in his hand, and when he sat down, he unrolled it and produced a pack of cigarettes and a lighter. He offered the cigarettes to the girl, and she refused. Then he offered them to me, and I took one. The little man said, "Thank you, no, but I have a cigar." He pulled out a crocodile case and got himself a cigar. Then he produced a knife, which had a small scissor in it, and he snipped the end off the cigar. "Here, let me give you a light." The American boy held up his lighter. "That will not work in this wind." "Sure it'll work. It always works." The little man removed his unlighted cigar from his mouth, cocked his head to one side, and looked at the boy. "Always?" he said slowly. "Sure, it never fails. Not with me, anyway." The little man's head was still cocked over on one side, and he was still watching the boy. "Well, well, so you say this famous lighter, it never fails. Is that you say?" "Sure," the boy said. "That's right." He was about 19 or 20 with a long freckled face and a rather sharp bird-like nose. His chest was not very sunburned, and there were freckles there too, and a few wisps of pale reddish hair. He was holding the lighter in his right hand, ready to flip the wheel. "It never fails," he said, smiling now because he was purposely exaggerating his little boast. "I promise you, it never fails." "One moment, please." The hand that held the cigar came up high, palm outwards, as though it was stopping traffic. "Now just one moment." He had a curiously soft, toneless voice, and he kept looking at the boy all the time. "Shall we not perhaps make a little bet on that?" He smiled at the boy. "Shall we not make a little bet on whether your lighter lights?" "Sure, I'll bet," the boy said. "Why not?" "You like to bet?" "Sure, I'll always bet." The man pushed and examined his cigar. I must say I didn't much like the way he was behaving. It seemed he was already trying to make something out of this and to embarrass the boy, and at the same time I had the feeling he was relishing a private little secret all his own. He looked up again at the boy and said slowly, "I like to bet too. Why we don't have a good bet on this thing? A good big bet." "Now wait a minute," the boy said. "I can't do that. But I'll bet you a quarter. I'll even bet you $1 or whatever it is over here. Some shillings, I guess." The little man waved his hand again. "Listen to me. Listen. Now we have some fun. We make a bet. Then we go up to my room here in the hotel where is no wind. I bet you cannot light this famous lighter of yours 10 times running without missing once." "I'll bet I can," the boy said. "All right, good. We make a bet, yes?" "Sure, I'll bet you $1." No. I make you very good bet. I am rich man, and I am sporting man also. Listen to me. Outside the hotel is my car. It's very fine car. American car from your country. Cadillac. Hey, now, wait a minute. The boy leaned back in his deck chair and he laughed. "I can't put up that sort of property. This is crazy." "Not crazy at all. You strike lighter successfully 10 times running and Cadillac is yours. You like to have this Cadillac, yes?" "Sure, I'd like to have a Cadillac." The boy was still grinning. "All right, fine. We make a bet. I put up my Cadillac." "And what do I put up?" The little man carefully removed the red band from his still unlighted cigar. "I never ask you, my friend, to bet something you cannot afford. You understand?" "Then what do I bet?" "I make it very easy for you, yes?" "Okay, you make it easy then." "Some small thing you can afford to give away. And if you did happen to lose it, you would not feel too bad, right?" "Such as what?" "Such as, perhaps, the little finger of your left hand." "My what?" The boy stopped grinning. "Yes, why not? You win, you take the car. You lose, I take the finger." "I don't get it. How do you mean you take the finger?" "I chop it off." "Jumping jeepers, that's a crazy bet. I think I'll just make it $1." The little man leaned back, spread out his hands, palm upwards, and gave a tiny contemptuous shrug of the shoulders. Well, he said. "I do not understand. You said lights, but you will not bet. Then we forget it, yes?" The boy sat quite still, staring at the bathers in the pool. Then he remembered suddenly he hadn't lighted his cigarette. He put it between his lips, cupped his hands around the lighter, and flipped the wheel. The wick lighted and burned with a small, steady yellow flame, and the way he held his hands, the wind didn't get to it at all. "Could I have a light too?" I said. "Gee, I'm sorry, I forgot you didn't have one." I held out my hand for the lighter, but he stood up, came over to do it for me. "Thank you," I said, and he returned to his seat. "You having a good time?" I asked. "Fine," he answered. "It's pretty nice here." There was silence then, and I could see that the little man had succeeded in disturbing the boy with his absurd proposal. He was sitting there very still, and it was obvious that a small tension was beginning to build up inside him. Then he started shifting around in his seat, rubbing his chest, and stroking the back of his neck, and finally he placed both hands on his knees and began tapping with his fingers against the kneecaps. Soon he was tapping with one of his feet as well. "Now just let me check up on this bed of yours," he said at last. "You say we go up to your room, and if I make this lighter light 10 times running, I win a Cadillac. If it misses just once, then I forfeit the little finger of my left hand. Is that right?" "Certainly, that is the bet, but I think you are afraid." "What do we do if I lose? Do I have to hold my finger out while you chop it off?" "Oh, no, that would be no good. You might be tempted to refuse to hold it out. What I should do, I should tie one of your hands to the table before we started, and I should stand there with a knife ready to go chop the moment your lighter missed." "What year is the Cadillac?" the boy asked. "Excuse, I do not understand." "What year? How old is the Cadillac?" "Ah, how old? Yes, it is last year. Quite new car. But I see you are not betting man. Americans never are." The boy paused for just a moment, and he glanced first at the English girl, then at me. "Yes," he said sharply, "I'll bet you." "Good!" The little man clapped his hands together quietly once. "Fine," he said. "We do it now. And you, sir?" He turned to me. "You would perhaps be good enough to to referee." He had pale, almost colorless eyes with tiny, bright black pupils. "Well," I said, "I think it's a crazy bet. I don't think I like it very much." "Nor do I," said the English girl. It was the first time she'd spoken. "I think it's a stupid, ridiculous bet." "Are you serious about cutting off this boy's finger if he loses?" I said. "Certainly I am. Also about giving him Cadillac if he win. Come now, we go to my room." He stood up. "You like to put on some clothes first?" he said. "No," the boy answered. "I'll come like this." Then he turned to me. "I'd consider it a favor if you'd come along and referee." "All right," I said. "I'll come along, but I don't like the bet." "You come too," he said to the girl. "You come and watch." The little man led the way back through the garden to the hotel. He was animated now and excited, and that seemed to make him bounce up higher than ever on his toes as he walked along. "I live in Annex," he said. "You like to see car first? It's just here." He took us to where we could see the front driveway of the hotel, and he stopped and pointed to a sleek pale green Cadillac parked close by. "There she is, the green one. You like?" "Say, that's a nice car," the boy said. "All right, now we go up and see if you can win her."